Okay, everybody, I'm just going to start the stream. The rest of the people, I've got a couple other people who might be joining me, and you can see the link at the bottom here, which actually I'm going to post in the chat itself, in case anybody else outside of that chat group wants to join. Okay, so the subject I want to talk about today is arguments with emotion versus arguments from emotion, or emotional arguments. And there is a big difference between them, although people that I've been talking to and arguing with or getting into debates with don't seem to get the difference between the two. So I was going to try to outline or highlight the big difference between the two. Because in previous streams, I have gotten angry with other people. I have what they consider lashed out, and they consider going or what are some other terms that they've used? Yeah, just completely going spastic or things along those lines. Now, the problem with that perception is they act as if I don't have a valid reason for being angry when we're in these particular arguments. They act as if I'm getting angry because we're discussing subject matter that I'm personally involved with or something along those lines. So the big issue that people kept bringing up was when we're talking about religion, I get angry. And it's not that we're talking about religion. That's what I want to try to highlight here. The reason I was getting angry is they keep shutting down the debate completely, and sometimes they do this without thinking. I think Brandon may have done this without thinking, or I think his name is Brandon. Something Insanity, or no, he goes by Baphomet or something. I don't know. He changed his name like 3 or 4 times. So I'm not sure what his moniker is anymore. Mr. Insanity or Baphomet or something like. But anyway, but he joined a conversation. We're talking about religion in general. And his response is, "Oh, but that's all made up superstition." Okay, if it's all made up superstition, then there's no point in discussing it. If it's all that's the implication there. Is if it's mindless fairy tales or just made up nonsense. If it's like Santa Claus or if it's like the Easter Bunny, then it makes no sense to believe in it as an adult, although there are billions of people who believe in some kind of deity and some kind of religious aspect to it. Oh, hey, Hunter.
Oh, hey there, HUMANE. What's going on, dude?
It's going pretty good. Did you have a nice Memorial Day?
Yeah, I did. I had a really good Memorial Day. It's been a while since we both talked, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, we discussing Roseanne doing the worst thing a comedian could ever do is apologize for a joke.
Oh, yeah. What?
Roseanne Barr. She actually
apologized for a joke. Well, yeah, Bill Maher apologized for a joke, and he made an entire episode about it. I was like, dude, it was a good joke.
Pathetic.
I don't understand why. He had like Ice Cube or no, right? He had some. I think he had that Dyson guy on there, and he had Ice Cube, right? Telling him how he's not allowed to use that word. I'm like, dude, you were in a group called NWA. Like, that word was in the name of your group. Like, and you're trying to tell people, oh, you can't use that word. And it's like, oh, that's... The mindset, yeah. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then that Kendrick Lamar thing. Although,
yeah, it's...
to be fair, the whole thing looks staged to me. I don't...
Principle, the reason why they hold a kind of double standard for the N-word is because they look at this through the sort of lens of intersectionality. They see it because white people were the oppressors, that inherently when they say the N-word that they're oppressing the black person. While when a black person says the N-word because they're the oppressed group, quote-unquote oppressed group, they're taking back the word and they're making it, and they're essentially, when they're using it for a greeting or a sort of symbol or a kind of sign of my buddy, my friend, what they're saying they're doing is they're taking it back, and they're making it a somewhat
they're taking the power out of it.
Symbol.
they're taking the piss out of it. That's what they're doing, and that's what they should do. The problem is they're not taking the piss out of it for every instance. It's like they can use the word back and forth as a greeting. That it takes away the negative connotation. It takes away the power of that word. But then by saying, nobody else can use that word, that adds power back to it. I'm like, dude, that you're defeating the purpose. The purpose is to say it so much that it doesn't matter anymore. It rolls off your back like water off of a duck. That's what you're trying to get to.
There's this kind of concept of the sort of these kind of words that that when you think about the N word and how it was brought up and whatnot, the black community is always I don't think this really they started using the N word until like the 1960s during the kind of black
the black power kind of. It was like the civil rights didn't really do that sort of thing. It was more the militant side where they're like, that's our word, and they're taking it back. The kind of the Black Panther movement. Yeah.
Bill Maher had Michael Eric Dyson. Michael Eric race baiting 3 children out of wedlock. I don't know if all of his children were out of wedlock, but three kids by multiple women. Freaking Eric Dyson, the guy who should the lead, like the guy, you're an angry white man, Dyson. To Jordan Peterson, that man who was like the most. That man makes me sick. Literally, I think the man is like he's a deeply immoral person, or at least he's very misguided. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on the man, but at the same time, you still have to think to yourself, what is this man? What is this man? What is his deal? Why is he so bent up on sort of? I think it's because it's his income. I think because he makes.
And I think he said that in the debate itself when he said, "Oh, Jordan Peterson with your best-selling book, Jordan Peterson, when he tweets about something, everybody follows. It's like, I wish he would tweet something about me." It's like, well, yeah, that's the whole reason you're here, is you're tagging onto his coattails, hoping that some of that reflected glory will come onto you. That was the entire purpose of his debate. Is he is like, I wish you would say something about my book, and it was like a plug for his publicity, or for his to get him out there and get attention for himself. I think it backfired. Well, maybe depends on your perspective. Maybe it got the results that he wanted, and now negative publicity is good, or.
Yeah,
right?
Well, the thing is that there's this saying that there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah.
If you can get your name out there, I mean, I think I kind of follow. I think I might have followed that a little bit when I was with Naked Ape, with that whole that whole shtick with him. And I think maybe in the back of my head I was thinking, okay, maybe I can get somewhere with this or something. I'll be honest with you.
I think the problem is you were thinking about what can I get from them, as opposed to what can I offer them. That's what's the backward meant, and it's something I understand. You're a young guy. That's kind of something you gotta kind of learn through experience. Be like, if I want to build relationships with people, it's not what they can offer me. It's got to be about what I can offer them. Now you may look at them and be like, those are the people I want to hang out with. Because they're the popular YouTubers, or they're saying the things that you like, and you like that environment. That's what they're offering you. But if you coming to the table, it's got to be, okay, what am I presenting in return? What would give them an incentive to say, oh, that guy's cool, I would like to hang out with him. So, and that's the thing that it took me way too long to figure that out. And that's really, really, really essential when building relationships, especially in the dating cycle. It's like when I was in high school and all that sort of thing, I had this mindset of, I'm looking for this type of girl, and I was looking for and it wasn't, I didn't have it in my head, wait, if I ever meet this woman, what is she gonna, what am I offering in return? Like, what is she gonna be like, this guy, he was looking for me, therefore I should hang out with him. Like, no, You have to bring a girl like that, or if you've got this idealistic version of the girl that you want to date, you have to think, okay, what kind of man would she be looking for? And you're like, oh, yeah, it's not me right now, so I need to start improving myself. And, I need to, I need to be what they're looking to hang out with, or what they're looking, the counterpart to them. But that's what Dyson doesn't do. Dyson doesn't care about any, at least from my understanding from that debate and the other appearances I've seen. It's not about what anybody else, or what he can offer anybody else. It's about what he can take from other people. It seemed to be repeated consistently in his mantra.
Yeah, the man is also not very intellectually honest either.
Oh no.
I remember during a sort of talk he had at Georgetown University, professors, he actually said Michael Brown, who was murdered, and I'm just thinking there, yeah, nope. You're delusional. You're like, nope.
Not and using also, that word correctly.
And also, he said on a video made by PBS, he said, is being able to have an encounter with the police and live the talk about it. And I'm just like,
yeah,
oh, dude, you are really trying hard. And he talked about a kid who was essentially who said after reading, a book about how the Ku Klux Klan treated black people back in the days and whatnot, and the horrors that went on in slavery and whatnot, he says, wow, this is the first time in my life that I've ever been ashamed to be white. And rather than Michael Harrison doing the right thing and saying, no, you should never be guilty for your own path, for your own.
Yeah, and
no, you should not let that guilt get you down. You should take that guilt and use it to do something good, rather than telling the kid, no, you should not feel guilty whatsoever. He's essentially telling the kid, if you don't want to feel guilty anymore, become like an activist and adopt my sort of, far left ideology.
Yeah,
and,
but
it's this and whatnot.
It's the being. This is a weird aspect of the left. Is you're not responsible for your own actions. Anything that's good in your life is not from you. It's from outside sources. And anything bad that a group of people did, well, you're responsible for that. It's like, how can you have that mentality? It's like, nothing you do, you have a responsibility for, either positive or negative. Nothing is your fault. The criminals, they had no choice. The people who have success, like Jordan Peterson and his books and his popularity, that's not him, that's his privilege. And
I don't want to be...
And yet, it's his responsibility to take account for everything white people have done. I'm like, how can you have that contradictory view? It's like, you're not responsible for anything, and yet you're responsible for what the group does. And I'm like, how is that possibly sensical? Who is the group if none of them are responsible for the actions?
It's what is it called again when they what was it called during Vietnam when the monk self-immortal when that Buddhist monk lit himself on fire.
Immolation.
Yeah,
right?
Self-immolation.
Setting yourself on fire.
What it is, it's not just virtuous saying, it's self-immolation to make yourself. Essentially, you feel guilty for this, so you put down your entire race just so you don't feel responsible.
No,
and they make them like this on purpose.
How can a race be held responsible if individuals within that race can't be held responsible?
From an ideological standpoint, it makes no sense to us, but to them it makes sense because they're not thinking along the lines of individual by individual. They're thinking along the lines of hyper collectivity.
Well, how does the group be held accountable for what people within that group have done if the people themselves aren't held accountable for anything they do?
Give them some. Well,
that's what doesn't make sense to me. It's like, okay,
let's try to steel man their argument. They would tell you that, oh no, you're white, but not you. I mean, white privilege exists. You may not benefit from everything that even probably most of the stuff you've done in your life is probably due to your own success and good for you. But there was a good part of that was due to the fact that due to the historical circumstances, your people were placed at a higher advantage due to slavery and being pro that black people are not as culturally as they're not as accepted in society as whites, and therefore there's a much better image attributed to whites, such as being responsible, being not as criminal on as often, not being dumb and whatnot. There's a lot of positive things that are attributed to white character, which are not attributed to a black character, and this can be traced back all the way to this sort of slave days and Jim Crow days. That's what I believe they would say, or some along those lines.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then it's the society that white people. So in the same sense that it's not the criminal's responsibility because they're committing crime, because they're just a product of the system. Couldn't it also be the case that the white privilege is a product of the system, and people who are white, who are benefiting from that privilege, it's not their fault, it's the system's fault? That's what doesn't make any sense to me, is it's like, okay, if I'm black, that means the system is holding me down, and I've got underprivileged, and it's privileging these white people. Well, in that same sense, how is it the white person's responsibility or burden if the system is the one giving them the privilege, if the system is the one putting them ahead and making them look better?
Well, the thing, I think,
if it's all outside of individual responsibility, I mean, that's the problem that you get here is.
Well, then they would probably ask you, can you separate the system and the people? Because they would say that the system is made up of the people.
But that's what they are doing. They're separating the system from the people. And you're like, well, if you don't want blacks to be viewed as criminals, then maybe blacks should stop committing crime. That seems to make sense to me. So the individual black person is their responsibility to, even if they have every incentive to commit crime, to not do it, to take the higher road, to sacrifice themselves for the higher cause. I mean, I guess that's a bad way of putting it, but if you have to, like, oh, I have to commit crime in order to stay alive, well, then don't commit the crime, and you may end up dying because you didn't commit a crime for whatever. That doesn't make any sense to me, but that seems to be the impression, is they have no other choice but to commit crime. So then the only choice there would be to not commit a crime and then suffer the consequences of that.
Oh, okay, so I want to get back to Roseanne real fast after this, but I want to say one more thing, that it makes no logical sense why black people living in these horrible communities with high rates of crime, very bad living spaces and whatnot, just don't pack up their bags and move to like the countryside to where it's cleaner. Well, that's better people. And I think it's because they're scared that there's a whole bunch of like racists on the outside or something. Well, I mean,
I don't know. They say it's too expensive and all that sort of thing, but it's like living in a rural community is way less expensive than living in a city. People are spending thousands of dollars a month on rent in the city, like for nothing, little one-room apartments. And I'm like, you spend that same amount of money in a rural area, that covers all of your bills, your living expenses for 3 months, and you get a full house and not some little tiny cramped apartment. That's.
Yeah, but then they would say they'd have to deal with them with being the kind of black sheep, quite literally, of the neighborhood. Because they would be like the only black, they'd be scared they'd be like the only black person in the white community. They'd be scared to be whitewashed. I think the reason why a lot of them stay in their communities is because they don't want to, because people are more comfortable with what they're familiar with. And this is, and I didn't understand this until I was like much older, because I was always autistic. I have no real connection to anything other than people who are very close to me, such as my mom or my dad or I was going to say my sister, but anyway, I'm joking.
Okay, so I think we still got a little off topic. So what exactly did Roseanne say? Because I just heard of this a couple of minutes ago when you guys were talking about it on the chat. So what exactly was the joke?
Well, she said something along the lines of, I hope you don't mind you didn't mind me inviting you to my Aspie asylum, to the DM, to the Twitter DMs, to my mass Twitter DM. Did I not invite you?
Yeah, hang on a second. I guess maybe you did. Yeah, okay. So you got the joke there?
It's in there, yeah. You just gotta scroll up a little bit. I got Dire Wolf in here, which was kind of cool. And
okay.
I invited Irate Bear too,
and she apologized for that?
she apologized for a joke. She says it's something, I forgot who she was probably talking about Obama, and she said it's like the Muslim Brotherhood plus the Planet of the Apes or something.
Okay, so it was racist because she said ape.
Yeah.
But she was calling Suzanne Rice a man. So if you had removed ape from the situation, Suzanne Rice is a man with big swinging balls, then it would be okay. But she said ape balls, and that's the problem. Oh, how dare you say ape? What? Like, no, the joke is not that she is. It has nothing to do with her race at that point. Holy crap, people are stupid. This is.
Welcome to 2018, Humane Mind.
Like, the context is clearly making fun of her gender. That's, like, I would think there would be outrage against that, but no, apparently it's racist because of the ape state. No, it's because apes have big balls. That's the... Like, she could have said donkey balls. She could have said elephant balls. What the... Yeah. The joke would still make sense if with that in there, but apparently...
I mean, she probably... I don't know if she used... If she called her... And I think the other reason why she said something was because...
Oh, wait. Valerie
Chelsea
Jarrett.
Clinton.
Wait, maybe that's a different comment, because... Valerie Jarrett is what I'm looking at here. Okay, wait. Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby. Yeah, maybe I'm looking at the wrong comment. Hang on a second, let me... So, because the one I was seeing was talking about Suzanne Rice as a... But maybe that's not the...
No, I think it was the I think it was the one with the 8 balls.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to find the exact quote, but they won't obviously show it because, oh, it's too edgy. It's too...
Alright. I'm going...
Okay, let me see.
I figured out how to finally put hangouts on the kind of background and be able to still talk to you while scrolling through. All right.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact quote because there seems to be two. One about Valerie Jarrett, and then one about the Suzanne Rice. So I'm not sure which one is. Okay. Since deleted tweet that says Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ.
Valerie Janet.
You know, Jarrett. Jarrett.
President in early Tuesday, star, head writer, and executive Rosa attacked Valerie Jarrett, a senior advisor to former Barack Obama, in a since deleted tweet in which she said Muslim Brotherhood plus Planet of the Apes
had a baby equals VJ.
Yeah, he was making fun of Valerie Jarrett.
Yeah, I don't know who Valerie Jarrett is, but...
A senior advisor to former President Obama. Valerie, I'm gonna take a look at her.
Yeah, that's what I was about to do. I was like, let's pull up a picture. You know what? Completely accurate. I have...
Oh, wait. Go to images.
Yeah. And I'm like...
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
She looks like Helena Bonham Carter's character in that film. Like,
yeah,
like if you put the two pictures together, that like she looks like the one from the Tim Burton one.
She really does. It was way. I won't. Ugh. With some people getting triggered by jokes. A joke's a joke. She subsequently apologized. You never a joke ever.
You know, she shouldn't apologize for it. She'd been like, "Dude, tell me I'm wrong." Like, she should have responded with a picture of
exactly a meme,
and then put the two together and been like, "Dude, tell me I'm wrong." I mean, you may think it's racist, but
yeah. I apologize to Valerie Jarrett and to all Americans. I am truly sorry for making a bad joke about her politics and her looks. I should have known better. Forgive me. My joke was in bad taste. Cuck. I smell cuck. I smell female cuck over here. My gosh,
had she held her ground, maybe the consequences wouldn't have been so bad. Yeah. But it's the caving in. It's the you give him any little bit.
That's why Donald Trump is the president. He didn't show a single ounce of weakness.
No, she's like, whatever, don't care.
The ability to I mean, there's a line between genuinely making a mistake and making a joke. Okay, a joke. You can make a joke about anything and not be serious. And I know that there is a little bit of of nuance when it comes to like jokes about, let's say, rape or something. But a joke about this is just. It's a joke. It's completely, what's the word? But it's neutral. It's not. It's benevolent. It's not benevolent. What's the word for it? Between benevolent and malicious.
Benign.
Benign. Yes. It's absolutely benign. Joke that she made about Valerie Jarrett is absolutely benign. Oh hi, yes, man. How are you doing today, my man?
Other than I don't know if it's a pinched nerve or something in my neck, I'm all right. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing okay.
All right.
Yeah, I broke my neck 4 years ago. All my nerves are pinched.
God,
wait, I'm joking, but it's just
I don't know. But I'm just gonna say this. Whenever I have that, I don't know if it is a pinched nerve, but whatever it is, it made death sound like a good alternative a few hours ago. So you guys are talking about emotion with arguments with emotion versus emotional arguments.
Yeah, at least that's the main topic. Although right now we're talking about the Roseanne Barr situation.
I am totally lost on that. Can you guys catch me up to speed there?
She wrote. Here's the tweet. He wrote. Valerie Jarrett was a former President Barack Obama advisor, and she tweeted this out: Muslim in Planet of the Apes had a baby equals Valerie Jarrett, but it was in initials VG. DJ.
No, look at the pictures of this lady. I was like,
yeah, it's accurate.
I should not be laughing at that. That's fucking hilarious. I
mean, the simple response should have been from Valerie Jarrett to make a picture or make a statement about Roseanne Barr, because Roseanne Barr, pretty haggardly, man.
Yeah. Especially
like you could make
yeah. Honestly, whoever the chick just offended, what's her name again? Let me Google her. Valerie Jennings.
Roseanne Barr looks like the trash lady from Labyrinth.
Oh,
Valerie.
Yeah, like look at the picture. So.
Okay, Roseanne Barr. I'm gonna Google that chick.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, she looks like her face is melting. I swear to God. Anyhow.
Yeah, she looks like the trash Muppet. That's.
Yeah.
Put the two together.
It looks like the only way you can make her look younger is you take all of her roots, you drag it to the back of her head. And
so
then take
that's the appropriate response to something like this. Is like, okay, low blow, all right, low blow in kind, and then it goes away, and no one ever has to talk about it again.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, Jarrett, that's an unusual way of responding to me.
Yeah. So I was just saying, the Valerie Jarrett does look like probably an extra from Planet of the Apes. The Tim.
You know what? If Roxanne Barr has the balls to say this, she should just go tell Valerie Jarrett to shut up and eat fried chicken and watermelon.
I don't even understand how this is a racial thing. And it's like that's like that's what I'm not getting.
If you compare a black person, I remember when Bill O'Reilly, he was executed for a joke because there was this black, I think it was either senator or House of Representatives member who had the hairstyle to not who's that other.
No, he made a joke about not working, and it was something I forget what the exact situation.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. He was making a joke about a black singer from the one who sang "It's a Man's World." That one. It's a man's world. I know the whole song, yet I can't sing it. It's not Jamie Foxx. It's Jamie.
James Brown.
James Brown. Thank you, James Brown. He said a black female senator had a hairstyle like James Brown.
Oh yeah, I thought that was actually like if you look at that is a pretty good.
And they called him racist. Like one article said, Bill O'Reilly's not even trying to hide his racism. What did he do? Did blackface come out with a banjo and start singing old boy Tucker, old
No, you.
Tucker,
No, and it's, to the best of my knowledge, Bill O'Reilly didn't apologize for that. He just said no. He's like, no, look. He did exactly what you're supposed to do. He took a picture. James Brown took a picture of them, put the two together, and said, "Hey, tell me I'm wrong here." That's the correct approach. You're like, okay. If you don't see, I see the similarities here. If you don't, maybe you're the racist. That's
yeah. This kind of reminds me of like one of those things where it's gonna get so bad that people are legitimately gonna be racist. Like I remember an old Naked Ape video where he said, "I'm racist now." He's like, he saw that solution for white guys, and he made this essentially like this video that was so edgy that it was essentially called the video was literally called "Why White People." It was called "I'm Racist." MTV made me racist, and it was like the most like he brought the racism levels up to like 9,000. Like there's this one point where he says, "Listen, you can't. I know liberals try to do this thing where they try to say black people are not black anymore, but you can't actually stop somebody from being black, and that's why Detroit is such a hellhole."
Oh, you almost said shithole. I would have made you a total racist.
Shit. That's why Detroit.
You know what's funny when people are like talking about why we should bring in refugees? It's like, wouldn't they call those countries shitholes? That's why we have to bring them over here.
Yeah. Well, they also forget, why are they shitholes now? Oh yeah, the people who lived in them made them shitholes. That it's kind of like no, they didn't make their country terrible. Like yeah they did. The reason their country's terrible is the people in it made it terrible.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people point out that they try to say that the reason why Haiti's so bad is because is that France placed a massive debt on the Haitians for the war and whatnot. But at the same time, it's just like, and this stifled their economic growth. But I don't see, like, listen, the other side of the coin, same natural resources, same everything, they are much better off. Their economy is it's a third world country, and the Dominican Republic, while it's not exactly first world, it's still much better.
Yeah, you're cutting out but I think we got the gist of what you're saying. Yeah, and there's a lot of countries. So this is something I brought up in my talk with Voltaire. I don't think we were actually streaming at the time. But there's like this is something that occurred to me after my discussion with Lapis and some of the other people, and I think it was with Ham, where they were talking about, oh well, those people just didn't have the same advantages and they didn't have the same natural resources and all that sort of thing. I'm like, So the idea is if somebody has all the natural resources and is just left alone, they would succeed on their own. But there are cultures in the Philippines which there's laws saying you can't go and interact with them. And so I guess the only human interaction they've had for centuries is seeing planes flying overhead or helicopters maybe. But they've never had any contact with any modern humans. Yeah, those people on that island should be the Wakandas. They, according to the left, because they've been in complete isolation. No one has fought wars with them. They've had abundant natural resources in their area. They should be superior to every other country in the world.
About natural resources, I would like to point out
they're not. They're running around in loincloths and shit.
Well, here's the thing. There's kind of a curse that it's known as the curse of natural resources, because if you look at the world, societies with abundant natural resources usually don't do very well.
Yes.
They're usually not very advanced. It's called the curse of natural resources because civilizations with tons of natural resources do very well, but because they do very well, there's no reason for them to advance their culture. There's no reason for them to innovate. There's no reason for them to refine anything.
Yeah.
And it's the same if you look at like the difference between the Comanche tribes and the northwestern tribes in North America. The northwestern tribes were not as culturally advanced. I mean, they had some advanced stuff, like a more advanced hierarchical class systems and whatnot, but they had no like advanced government, no advanced like ideas on religion. I mean, they were very good at wood crafting, but other than that, they had no other than material culture. They had no like non-tangible culture.
So trying to tie this back into the theme of today's stream. The arguments that they're making are arguments seems to be from emotion. Is those poor people, society has been against them, and they've been at war, and they've been they've been imperialized, or what's the word I'm looking for here? They've been colonized, and that's the reason that they're suffering. And it's all those poor people. But when they actually look at the facts and statistics and evidence just doesn't back up their claims about how these people were poor because people took everything from them. I'm like, then there's other societies that didn't have anybody take anything from them, and they're still stagnant and backwards in third world.
And an example of a society which was colonized was the Koreans. And the Koreans are doing very well.
And South Africa colonized and doing much better than its neighbor Zimbabwe, which is the worst off country on record.
The white people.
But Zimbabwe was not colonized to the extent that South Africa was. South Africa was heavily colonized, and until recently was doing fairly well. Now it's like, we got to kill all these whiteys and take all their stuff that was.
I don't think it's exact. To give them credit, the prime minister, the leader of the party that got that pass, says we don't want to kill white people yet.
Yeah.
That yet right there is just that is the creepiest thing ever. It's like yet.
Yeah.
It's like what yet? Meaning that means you're wanting to do this in the future.
No, they're doing it right now. They're just not doing it openly right now, which is what Lauren Southern's documentary is about. Because if you've seen some of the stuff on that, there's a whole lot of reporting on that, where gangs are roving these areas, killing people, raping people, taking their stuff, and when it's brought up to the government just turns a blind eye to it. They're like, yep, that's what's supposed to happen right now. It's the government's not actively doing it. But they're not doing anything to stop it. They're not investigating any of it. Yeah, they're not investigating any of it. They're not looking into it. They're not stopping people from doing it. And eventually it's going to flip over where the government is just going to outright encourage all of it. I don't know if that's quite there yet, but...
Hopefully the white people still have access to good weapons to where they can, defend themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up about why people should have weapons, certain types of weapons, especially to protect themselves. It's like, I remember HUMANe made a good point when he was talking about, like, the United States government is being fended off by some random terrorists or supposed terrorists in the Middle East, and they've been able to do that for over 10 years. So why the hell should the Americans not have the same type of weapons?
It's just stands to reason. They're like, oh yeah, there's no way we'd stand up with nukes and stuff. I'm like, yeah, with nukes and drones and all of our technology. And I'm like, then why haven't we won Afghanistan? Why haven't we won Iraq? Because if we've got all that technology and they have none of that, still held us off for years.
Yeah, like that to me never made sense. It's like if we're going to be in Iraq, in Afghanistan and Iraq and all these other Middle Eastern nations, where at this point I think you said we're just fighting with the people at this point. Yeah, and that's very true. Like, what's the enemy? And that's why
there is there's no central. Hey, once we take this point, we've taken everything. There isn't. That's what modern warfare is usually that's what we did in Iraq. So in Iraq, even though we were there for much longer than we should have been, the war was over in a matter of days. Because the Iraq government was so debilitated, all of their infrastructure was completely gone. They had no way of communicating, no way. At that point, it was rounding up stragglers. I still don't. And we were there with a military presence as they kept, attacking us there. But we weren't fighting anybody anymore. Like, we weren't fighting. There was no head honcho. There was no central government. We just spent 10 years fighting off the people trying to keep us out of there. That's It became
and it's completely worthless. And a lot of people were, and I think S-Man kicked Aircraft Sparky out of the thing for this because he says we went in there and we took all and we helped them out, and why can't we not take their oil? And S-Man
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Who kicked him out then?
I think it was Lapis, because from what happened, it sounded like he was making a threat towards Owen. But no, I wouldn't kick the fucker out for saying we should take their resources. I think that's fucking stupid, but I'm not going to kick that guy out. But, I mean, to me, if you're willing to overthrow a nation or just take their shit, then I think that's I think that's just absolute scum, but I don't think it's like...
Well, that's what they used to do in the Middle Ages. That's what they used to do in the medieval days.
That doesn't necessarily make it right.
It was considered manly, actually, back in those days. It was considered like the only manly way. Actually, capitalism and merchants were considered scum. They were considered the untouchables. It's the same as in India. The entrepreneur is still seen as an untouchable because it's seen as a very kind of effeminate and very kind of... very bad way.
It's degenerate.
Degenerate way to make money in there.
Okay. So what? Since you brought it up, that's something I said this in the comments, but Lapis apparently said HUMANE Mind is just raging in my comments and not worth addressing. He calls themselves they, her, whatever the pronoun is. They call themselves the effeminate degenerate, and they're being upset by Voltaire saying that the LGBT community is degenerate.
Okay, I got your answer here. The reason she calls herself the effeminate degenerate was to mock some dickhead who had called her that, so she went by that name. That was at least how I got. So
embracing the degenerate, right? That's what whatever they are doing, is saying I'm a degenerate. Yeah. What else you got? It's the same thing as when Clinton said basket of deplorables, and that's people started changing their name to deplorable. Like, okay, I'm a deplorable now, I guess. What else you got? I am completely on board with that. I'm like, hey, somebody says you're a degenerate, embrace it fully. But you can't embrace it fully while being mad when someone calls you a degenerate. That's like,
I mean,
it's just fucking stupid. You're like saying, oh yeah, I'm a degenerate, and everybody else that hang out with a degenerate. How dare you call me a degenerate? It's the same thing with the that's our word. You can't use our word. And like that's not how this works.
Retarded.
I will say this though that shit, I just lost my train of thought. I was just trying to think of what I wanted to say about that, but I'll just say that look, I did look back at that whole mess about what Voltaire said. To be fair, I should have just addressed what he said rather than just telling him to go fuck off. But I mean, the way he phrased it, I don't think people should be all that surprised that everyone reacted to him with such vitriol. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I mean, it was just this crazy shit.
It was a reaction to how he said it, and it was an appeal to how you said it. You can't say it that way. You can say it, but you can't say it that way. And that's what I kept seeing in the comments. I'm like, dude, what do you guys...
It was like my debate with Owen McDonald. Like, I was like, the reason why I think he got so upset with me was because I was very blunt. I was just like, here's what I think, and he just didn't like hearing it that way. And I think the same one with the Malap is just hearing, oh, LGBTQ lifestyle is a very degenerate lifestyle, and just saying it that bluntly to the point, it really causes people. It's kind of shock value, and people just are so shocked by it that they a lot of times don't know how to handle it, and they just kind of fly off the handle.
Yeah, that's why when I'm making a point about anything, I try not to go for the shock value. It's just I'll just say it in a way where it's like I just have a neutral approach to it, where I'll just like if I'm trying to say that the Iraq War was a war crime, I'm not going to say Bush is a terrorist, Cheney's a terrorist. I'm not going to pull the leftist move and call them all terrorists. I'm just going to say
you still have to use words accurately, and that's the purpose of what I'm talking about here. Is so the argument from emotion would be Bush is a terrorist, the military is a terrorist. That's the emotional argument. I'm like, you can't back that up with facts, statistics, or logic. You're just saying that as it's maybe hyperbole, but it's not a defensible position. Whereas you say the United States war on Iraq was technically a war crime, and then you bring up
bumper sticker reasoning.
Yeah, you bring up the fact that there was no actual threat provided by the Iraq country at the time. The actual terrorists that plotted the 9/11 incident, they came out of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, so Iraq had nothing to do with that. Also, the main hubs that they should have been focusing on was Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. And those are like countries that they've ignored for the most part with regards to all of this. And instead they go after Iran and Iraq. And I'm like, Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And I'm like, that's not where all of this came from. So it was a war on false premises. It was a war that didn't even begin to achieve the end result that it was hoping to achieve. And also, as far as I know, Congress didn't approve. I think they might have approved the initial invasion, right, for the war in Iraq.
Yeah.
They approved the war on terror, but not the invasion of Iraq or something along those lines, right?
Well, here's the thing.
It's been a while. My memory's a little. I knew there was something with Congress not going through proper channels.
I think I know. I remember learning about this in government class.
Yeah.
The president has not properly declared war like with World War II since World War II.
Yeah.
Like they have not properly gone to and usually if the president wants to declare war, he has to go straight to he has to go to Congress, ask them,
and it has to have a majority of
to sign for war, to sign a approval to go to war, and then they go to war. However, since then, what has happened is the executive branch has the full right to dispatch troops. However, the president has 60 days to get what is it called approval,
congressional
from
approval,
Congress. Congressional approval in order to before he has to bring them home.
Didn't they sign the authorized use of force against terrorists, Zack? Let me see if I can get the
Patriot Act.
I think it was the authorized use against terrorists, but then it was never formally declared as a war against Iraq, which doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah,
so technically that war was unconstitutional and would constitute a war crime. That's a defensible position. Makes sense. It can be argued rationally. The arguments from emotion, those are ones that are not defensible. Those are statements made. Sure, they may say, oh, they're war criminals and they should be tried or whatever. Making that claim is not as defensible as saying that the Iraq War was unjustified or was unconstitutional and was was unlawful. That's different from saying, but once it was done, right? Once it was done, it's not like they were going out and killing children and like the people, like those other people claim. It's like, oh yeah, actually, I think even Voltaire was saying that the primary purpose of government was to wage war, and I'm like, no, that's not at all the case. So it seems a little bit of hyperbole on both sides that is not justifiable given the context and the evidence.
Yeah.
That.
But I would say that with Voltaire, when he was talking about, because I'm going to go into a stream with him and Zack, I think tomorrow. Today's Tuesday, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go on that stream. I'm going to talk about some things he says, and I'm going to keep the gloves on and take your advice into account and everything. I guess at the time it was just seeing what he said, and it was like, if I would have said the same thing, I don't think I could have blamed anyone for giving me half the vitriol that we all gave him.
Well, I blamed you all. I was like, dude, this is not the So, I don't agree with what he said, but the approach taken to it, I was like, none of the arguments presented against him right now are valid arguments. That's the problem. Like he presented an argument that he can't defend, and the response was to present more arguments that are not defensible. And I'm like, dude, there's. At that point, it's a nuh-uh. It's two kids arguing about whether they're right or wrong, and I'm like, that's not how discourse works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or
all right.
I guess maybe not how discourse should work. That's more often than not, that's how discourse does occur. Although no distinct you can't gain any ground or lose any ground in a match like that, where it's the I'm right, you're wrong. Oh no, you're right, I'm right. Or sorry, I'm right, you're wrong. Or the no, you're wrong, I'm right. That's all it comes. It comes down to a shouting match, and I'm like, well, if that's your positions, no one's ever gonna change any minds. No one's ever gonna change their position. No one's ever gonna. New information isn't presented. So. This is a pointless argument. This is a shouting match.
Yeah, that's kind of what that is what it boiled down to. Is it was just a shouting match, and
I remember specifically Voltaire. You guys were getting on to Voltaire for being against you thought he was against universal suffrage and or be skeptical of it.
well, I saw his stream on his interview with Zack. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in that guy's head, but you.
Yeah, honestly, I don't fucking know either. Like, it's hard to know if he's being serious or if he's like, a better troll than Google it is. Like, I swear to God, like,
no, it's definitely not a better troll. A better troll would be someone who is consistently trolling. Voltaire seems to be found out in something he hasn't thought out through, and instead of acknowledging it, he just kind of repeats what he's originally stated, and I'm like, that's not. I'm starting to think Voltaire is a little bit more like Ham in that regard. Because Zack pointed out, yes, exactly the issue that Voltaire should address. So he said, women vote based on their biological imperative. I agree with that statement, and this seems to play out in our statistics that women tend to vote more for welfare. Women tend to vote more for leftist progressive policies. Because that's more resources for them and their kids. It makes a whole lot of sense that's the women's incentive when they're voting. But because that seems to, and that's biologically based. I agree with that. However, what Zack pointed out is that if you don't think women should have the vote because of those reasons, you also should think that black people should not have the vote because of their voting patterns. And if you look at black people voting history, largely Democratic, largely for the welfare state, same exact policies, and you're like,
look at the 2008 election. I think it was like almost like a super majority who were black voted for Obama in 2008.
Yeah, so his same arguments against women having the right to vote should be used against black people, but he wasn't consistent in that position. I was like that, and when Zack called him out on it, he's just like, "Oh, I'm just going to repeat that women shouldn't have the vote because of these reasons, and ignore that black people, that my argument could be used against black people."
Same with Tamaki. He just kept going on this fucking tirade about democracy, and I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't like democracy. I get it. Move the fuck on, please.
Yeah,
I honestly don't give two shits about democracy. I really don't. Like that's just not something I'm all that interested in, really. But Like he just kept going on and on and on about it, even in the chat, and it's like, I get your
that's
point.
the thing. It's like you can't say I don't care about this and then have a position in it. That's was like, oh, that I don't care about it, but I'm definitely adamant. I'm adamant that this is correct. And I'm like, what? If you don't care, then that means you don't. One way or the other, you don't have an opinion on it. If you honestly don't care, you don't prefer a side.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point to make. Yeah. And all in all, it was just kind of weird, and like I think I wrote like over, like I watched about 40-50 minutes, about an hour in, and I left this long ass comment, and there was a few points where it's like, Zack, make this little bastard just answer the question, because there was a few, because it was the most frustrating thing I ever watched.
Because it's kind of interesting how he says that women don't. Because women shouldn't have the right to vote, because if you look back through history, it wasn't actually the right to vote was not predicated on identities like that. It was mostly predicated on property ownership. Like the founding fathers believed that only should have the right to vote because they had the most responsibilities in society, and they understand and they believe that they understand more about the world. They understand more about the circumstances in politics, so they should have the right to vote, and that they're more educated. They have more responsibility, so they should have the right to vote.
The other thing is they've also proven that they know what they're doing with the resources they have.
Yes.
If they didn't, if they didn't know what they were doing, if they didn't know how to manage it properly, they might have gotten a lot of wealth, but then they'll lose it if they don't know how to keep, if you don't know how to manage your resources properly. Lots of people have inherited millions or have won the lottery, and they are bankrupted within 5 years. So
lottery winners are horrible at money.
And if you look at the suicides amongst them, it's pretty staggeringly high. And you're like, that because a lot of them go bankrupt, and they're like, well, if $1 million didn't fix my life, what hope do I have of ever getting it? So people who have property and have a certain amount of wealth and have kept it for a certain amount of years, well, they've shown that they know what they're doing with. They know how to properly manage things. They have a long-term viewpoint of the world. This is something that Voltaire does mention a lot, although he says it in a very weird way about that long-term time preference. No, it's just if you're more concerned with the future than in the present, you're not going to give up your long-term goals for the here and now, right? It's not that instant gratuity. You set aside, okay, I'm going to sacrifice the here and now for better in the future. That's the mindset of someone who has gained property and has maintained it. That same mentality is going to go into effect when their voting decision is like, hey, I could vote this way and I could get immediate bang for my buck, but that's going to hurt me in the long run. So I'm not going to vote that way. I'm going to vote for something that's going to be long term in my interest. But I would say Voltaire is having a double standard here, because when probed by Zack about this, he said in an aristocracy where women are allowed to own property, would you give them the right to vote? And he said no. And I'm like, no, you can't have those two opinions. That your reasoning behind giving people the vote based on property, yes. And then but women with property, no, they don't get the vote.
Yeah.
I'm like,
he also said about how much property. Like he then started to shift the goalposts with. It also matters how much property they own. It's like,
oh my god, he's trying. I think he's trying to dig into nuance. It's a lot like the vegans do. They try to dig into sort of ethical nuance.
But the nuance isn't there. They're trying to make nuance where there isn't nuance. And I was like, that's the problem. His arguments for why women shouldn't have the vote in an aristocracy would be purely from emotion, because he had no defense. He had nothing to support that position. He just said, that's just how I feel, or that's just what I believe. I'm like, that you believe it based on either a lie or based on nothing. Those are the types of beliefs that you're supposed to eradicate. Like, if I firmly believe this is definitely the truth and I've got no supporting evidence for it, sorry, I can't believe it outright adamantly. That's why my stance on religion, and people keep saying, oh, you're arguing for religion and you believe it. I'm like, I don't know. I just know I think this is true because that's where everything I'm looking at leads me to, but you are outright dismissing it, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like, because you don't have a valid stance to dismiss it all. I don't have a valid foot to stand on to support it, or at least outside of the arguments I presented. But you are adamantly stating that it cannot possibly be true, and yet when I probe for evidence on how it can't possibly be true, you just say, oh, there's no evidence for it being true. And I'm like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I've had to tell people, like, when they're talking about you, it's like I have to go in and say, no, he's not a Christian, he's a non-religious deist. And, like, the looks on their faces when they're like, well, oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah, well, they would argue that that's trying to add nuance where there isn't nuance. But what I'm stating, I don't know if there is a God or not. I think there is one, but I am not going to argue that you should believe there is one because I am unsure. But I think being unsure is a more tenable position than knowing outright that there isn't one. Being me being, you know what, I think there is a God, and I think that God aligns mostly with Christianity. At least that's my perspective at the moment.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I'm looking at from the evidence that I've seen in my life and in my history. That's where the evidence is pointing me towards. But to say that there absolutely is no God, and when asked, okay, why is there absolutely no God? You're like, well, there's no proof for him. Like that's not a valid argument. You have to reason as to why there can't possibly be a God, and you're not going to find very good arguments or very sound support for that because that's anti-science. Saying there's a universal negative is not something you can scientifically prove. Universal positives can be proven with science. Universal negatives cannot. But that's what they're trying to do. They're saying, oh, there's no proof of God, therefore gods don't exist. I'm like, that's not scientifically accurate, and you're the ones who say that Christianity is anti-science. No, science, or at least Christian scientists say, I think there is a God, so if there's a God, then these are things that I should look for in the universe, and so if I find those things, well, that is providing support in evidence that, hey, maybe there is a God. And that's what the whole Christianity or the creationist argument is. I think there is a God, and if there is a God, and he said that this is how the world was created, let's see if there's evidence to support that.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go, but you guys take care.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, thanks, man. It was nice talking to you.
Goodbye.
So, and that's the primary difference between arguments from emotion and arguments that are emotional. Arguments with emotion versus arguments from emotion. Arguments from emotion have no foundation. They have no supporting evidence. But arguments with emotion would be like, I believe definitely there's a God, and here's some evidence as to why I believe that. That's
arguments primarily based on emotion are actually a fallacy in themselves. It's known as the appeal to emotion. I learned that in thinking.
Yeah.
It's a fallacious way. It's like a prosecutor saying, I believe Brendan here is guilty. Look at how saddened the wife and the child are at the fact that this man murdered their father, even though he probably didn't. That's whether he did or didn't. That's not an argument.
Yeah. So this is something like, who was I talking with recently about this? To Kill a Mockingbird. Have you read that book or seen the movie?
I probably should. I mean, I heard it's a pretty good book.
It is really good, but that's exactly the situation. Is the people who are accusing the man of having raped the white woman were saying, "Oh, well, look at him. He's black." Where it's like, "Oh, yeah, but he's it's her word. Look at her outrage and her emotion. She's accusing this man of raping her, and her dad says he did it, and he's And they're acting as if, okay, that's your argument against this man, whereas the defense was proving, okay, he said he held her down with his left hand, and then he proved that the individual in the book, that he had no strength in his left hand because of an injury that he had earlier in his life, and he didn't have the grip that he couldn't have possibly done, which he said he did. He was proving, okay, their statements about him can't possibly be true because of this factor, this factor, this factor, and yet the other side was manipulating emotion. They didn't have any actual evidence that he'd done the crime. They just had witnesses saying he did, and arguments and saying, oh, well, look at the trauma, look at the hysteria. And it was even in the court case, the woman broke down or whatever, and it was, you know, I can't remember if this is the book or the movie, or if maybe this is both, where he was questioning her on the validity of her statements. She broke down and admitted that it wasn't true, and yet the man was still sentenced and found guilty. That's the problem with these arguments from emotion, is accusing someone of something they haven't done, or making a case for something that, and this, let's tie this back to current events about the whole gun control issue, because David Hogg and them are still in the news and all that sort of thing.
They're still reading, aren't they?
Yeah, they're still. Oh, what about the children? What about the harm and you're like, yes, that's an argument from emotion, when it's been proven that nothing that they are trying to implement right now will achieve the effects of saving children, of saving lives, of causing less. Nothing that they're suggesting at the moment is going to achieve that ends. So when they say, "Oh, but we're trying to save children," that's the appeal to emotion, with no support behind it. That's the problem.
David Hogg is just an. David Hogg, I mean, I'm sorry he went through that whole shooting thing, but the guy has turned into nothing but a big asshole. He's turned into a. So he's just turned into just a horrible human being, and it's pathetic. It's pretty pathetic to look at, because, you know, a few years from now he's going to disappear. They're never going to get gun control through, and Emma Gonzalez even attacked the car of a gun rights supporter, or at least, or it might have been a meme where it showed him Britney Spears, bold Britney Spears attacking the car.
So
I don't know.
There was a recent interview on Beauty and the Beta. I don't know if you watched that or are familiar with them. It's used to be called Skag 3. So it was Blonde in the Belly of the Beast and Matt Christensen. They do a podcast, and they last Sunday they interviewed one of the victim's brother. So an actual victim of that incident, her brother, and was being interviewed by them. But something that he mentioned that I had not heard of before that interview is the families of the victims have outright signed a letter and sent it to the governor, stating they did not want this incident to be used to enact gun laws, gun restrictions. All families. So there were 17 victims, and all 17 families all signed this letter and sent it to the governor. And David Hogg is out there trying to say, "Oh, the NRA is evil and the NRA is killing babies and we need more gun legislation." And like, the families of the victims, the people who are directly impacted, like some of the people who are out there speaking like Hogg and all of them have maybe lost friends and stuff, but these are people who have lost family members, and they said, "We don't want this incident to be used as an emotional argument for gun control." They actually, I was like, that when I heard that, I was like, why is this not being reported anywhere? That should be like headline news. It'd be like, dude, the families of the victims are saying, don't do this with the lives of the people we've lost. Don't use them.
Media.
Don't use them as pawns. But none of that's getting reported.
Of course, it's called the modern media. Yeah. They don't want anything of. I mean, they even ignored a bunch of black kids who were scared that higher amounts of police officers would lead to problems for them, even though the school to prison pipeline is a complete crock of shit. But regardless, they were ignoring them for David Hogg, because the David Hogg narrative was more important to them at the time than the sort of black oppression narrative. So they'll latch onto anything which will help them at the most.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how Hogg is getting the attention and spotlight, whereas the dad of the victims, the family members of actual victims, because their position is very much in favor of the Second Amendment, they don't get the spotlight, they don't get the attention. So the young man who was interviewed, I forget his name, but it's on the Christians. So it's Beauty and the Beta podcast that just from this the Sunday before Memorial Day. So at the very, very end of it, they interview this man for I think about half an hour, and he talks about the their initiative that the actual the victims and their families have started is something called Walk Up. Instead, there's a reaction to the walkouts, like the school walkouts, and they're like, no, change that, and they started this hashtag Walk Up. And so the idea is you can't stop this at the level of guns and at government and, you know, more restrictions and more law enforcement. The way to stop this is if you see somebody that's bullied, like the man who did the Florida shooting, if you see someone who is on the outs like that, go up and talk to them, befriend them. That's how you stop school shooters. Give them a reason, give them hope, give them faith in humanity. Because if you, this is another thing, reading Jordan Peterson's book, because he's analyzing a lot of these, the mass shooters, and so the Columbine kids, especially when they had their writings, and he's got sections of their writings where he's talking about it, and he's like, these kids had such a negative view of humanity, they were such a nihilistic view of the world. It wasn't the nihilism that they had entered wasn't just I need to end my own life, because that's what, was it Nietzsche, I think, or no? Oh, yeah, I think it might have been Nietzsche, who's like pretty predominant in the nihilism movement, but he thought that, when somebody's get so nihilistic in their view of the world that nothing matters, they will kill themselves. But he doesn't take it far enough, because these extremists, they take that nihilism, that hopeless feeling, and they say it's so hopeless, and it's not hopeless because of the way the world is, but it's hopeless because of other humans. And so if we kill all the humans, we're eliminating the problem. And that's what the kids at Columbine did, is they started making a list. This person wronged me. If they hadn't wronged me, my life would be better right now, but since they wronged me, now I'm going to go and take them out, so that way they don't wrong anybody else. And that's a very, it's like, when you start reading that stuff, you're like, they're not just crazy, but there's a rationality to why they do what they do. And you're like, it's because they don't blame themselves for their lifestyle, they blame all these other people, and once you get to that mindset, hey, I'm going to help somebody else by eliminating the human race or eliminating these people from the world, so they never bully someone, they never make anybody else's life miserable. And that's something way, it's the wrong perspective, but it's something a lot harder to fight against, except in the Walk Up movement. It's like, okay, if that's their perspective of the world, be the one person who walks up to them and befriends them and gives them a better view of humanity. Show them the better side. Be like, hey, not everybody in this world is a shithead. Not everybody is out there to ruin your life. Other people want you to succeed. Other people want to give you a leg up. Other people want you around and want you to be an active participant and an active, productive member of society. That's how you stop the crazy shooters, is making them feel included as opposed to giving them every reason to hate everything.
Yeah, I can imagine. That was something that was very important. I remember when I was a high schooler, the first time I was moving over from the sort of junior high room to the high school room in church. When I went into the high school room, I remember the first thing I did was I sat by myself, because I instantly thought, none of these people are going to really like me. None of them are going to really have anything to do with me. First thing I did, after like a few minutes after I sat down, this kid with the big old bushy hair sat by me and was like, "Hey, dude, what's going on?" And it's just like, what? And it was just like, they were trying. I know this might have been a church and it might have been a different circumstance, but it always helps to it always helps to be, no matter how odd somebody may seem, it's always important to talk to them, because they may not be that evil person you might think they are.
Yeah, and this is creepy person. And that is something about church and religion that has been kind of lost in the shift towards atheism, because or shift towards secularism in the United States, because that's the mentality of a church group. Somebody new is here. Let's go up and befriend them. Let's go up there and make them feel welcome. And that's something that I've seen and observed. So I've been attending Bible studies and going to meetings at Jehovah's Witness. I don't consider myself a Jehovah's Witness, but the people there they seem to have a very good grasp on the Bible and what the Bible says about things, and they've got everything that they're saying, they back it up with scriptural, with scriptures and
of course.
So
I just keep going.
Oh, I was about to say, but the other thing that I noticed about their meetings is it's not just the people who invited me. It's not just the people that I've talked to previously. People I've never met before or that have never seen me will go out of their way to come over and talk to me. That's not something you experience in other places. It's very rare that, like, if you're the new guy at work, that everyone will go out of their way to introduce themselves to you. I've been on several jobs where I go in there and I'm there for months or weeks and like, who's this guy? Like, maybe you're, like, they'll have, like, some group meeting and your boss will introduce you and, say hi to everybody. But then that's it. You maybe meet 5 out of 100 people, but in the church environment, like, I've only been to a couple of meetings and all that sort of thing, but I've met over half of that congregation, which is pretty bizarre, considering I was at work here for almost 2 years. I think I only met 15 people out of several thousand. I only know a handful of names of the people I work with, and yet I already know way more than that about the people that I've been going for 2-3 months, and that's been like, it's not. I went to work 4 days a week at this place for 2 years, and yet I'm at a place where I've meet, maybe once a week or once a month if I go there, and I've met at least, they broke their congregation down into smaller groups, but I've met at least 100 of them, and I'm like, that's not something that is typical outside of religion.
Yeah, I'd also say one more thing before I go, because I gotta read some stuff.
Oh.
I'm in summer school, and I gotta take a class to pass my GWAR, which is General Writing Assessment Requirements.
Mm-hmm.
But I just gotta say one more thing. I think one of the most telling differences between atheism and religion is this. I remember during a debate between Christopher Hitchens and Dinesh D'Souza, on his closing statement, Dinesh D'Souza got the last word, and yeah, Dad, I'll be out there in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my dad. Dinesh D'Souza said something along the lines of, when Mother Teresa was in Haiti, or India or something, she walked up to a man who had what is it called again? It's called
leprosy.
Leprosy. And in Haiti, if you have leprosy, nobody will touch you. Nobody will even look at you. But she walked up to him and hugged him, and he said that. And she said, and she said another man asked him, "Why the hell would you do that?" And she goes, "I did it for the love of Jesus Christ." And in response to that, Christopher Hitchens, after Dinesh D'Souza said that, Christopher Hitchens said, "Oh, yuck, yuck." And then Dinesh D'Souza said, "See, that's the difference between religious people and people like him. They're cold, they're unfeeling. They don't really care. Okay, they're a lot more selfish." Or he said something along those lines. But he says, religious people, we may not be perfect, but at least we're willing to admit our faults and we're willing to try to be better people. This is essentially what he said. I think that there's a strong case. For that when you look at the statistics of giving the charity and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But my dinner's here, so
okay.
I gotta go. It was good talking to you.
Thanks for joining me. All right, so we'll see if anybody else joins me here, but I don't think so. But so getting back to the main topic. Wait, what's going on? Why is it? So I know he left, so I'm still streaming, but okay, let's put me back on there instead of that message. Alright, so tying all this back into the main point that I wanted to talk about. So there are often times where people will make arguments, and they get emotional about those arguments, and I do that as well. I get angry, sometimes and my brother has done this on the stream as well. But if you're making an argument while you're angry or while you are impassioned about it, but you're still making logically consistent points. You're still building a case from point A to point B to the logical conclusion of C, and it's all coherent, and it all builds on each other, and your premise is logical, and your arguments are sound. It doesn't matter if you are getting angry about it, if you're getting emotional about it, if you are, or possibly even getting sad about it, or being somber about it. That's your emotions displayed while making those arguments. Do not take away from that argument, because that argument is sound regardless of your emotions made while making that argument. Because if you were to just take the text of what you had said and write that down, and someone was able to read that without the emotional charge of it, they would still see that it is coherent and sound. And they would try very hard to poke holes in it. I mean, there might be something that is stated that is you didn't consider, and maybe there's something that they can say to knock out the foundation of your argument and prove that your argument was faulty. I'm not saying that I don't make any arguments that aren't bad. I've made bad arguments. I've made arguments that weren't sound, and some people have called me out on it. I've had to go back and look at it and be like, oh, yeah, that was an illogical leap there. I left out some middle ground, or that I made an argument that isn't valid, and yeah, okay, so those are the types of things you have to question about yourself, and you have to look and like, okay, now, was my conclusion incorrect, or was just my way of defending my conclusion incorrect? I think, for the most part, a lot of the conclusions I've come to have been correct. Some of them have been incorrect. I mean, I've had too many arguments and discussions on this channel to go over all of them, and this is something about, I do need to go back and review at least some of these, so that way I can add people's links to their channels and stuff like that. It's on my list of things to do, guys. It's just a matter of getting around to it with the other obligations I have on me at the moment. And then I also want to make a video going back through and like, okay, these are arguments where I was clearly in the wrong, or these are positions, see, this was a bad argument because of this. I want to go back through and critique my own arguments and my own positions where I know that I've messed up, where I know I've been wrong. But that being said, making arguments while emotional, or while angry, or while sad, or while that passion is inside of you, that doesn't negate the argument. You can't say, oh, well, you said that because you were angry. And I'm like, but what I said was true. So being angry while saying it doesn't negate what was said. But that seems to be the argument that a lot of people have made against me when I'm making claims. Like, oh, he's getting emotional, he's getting spastic, take a Midol. I'm like, argue against what I said. Was anything that I said when I was being angry, was any of that invalid? Was any of that purely emotional, or was it sound logically? Strip out the emotion, does the argument remain? If the argument remains, then adding the emotion on top of that does not negate the argument, but it actually strengthens the argument. Whereas, take the emotion out of David Hogg's argument. Take the emotion out of the arguments that are constantly being made on certain topics about LGBT. Take the emotion out of it, they've got nothing. Their argument falls apart. You're dehumanizing them. Take the emotion out of that, and be like, no, there's no argument here. If it was dehumanizing to call an LGBT person he when they want to identify as a she, then the logical conclusion would be to make laws so that way it would be illegal to call a transgender person he if they want to be referred to as she. If it's actually dehumanizing, if it's but they said that can you believe this person being homophobic? Can you believe this person being transphobic? Can you believe this person being Islamophobic? Take the emotion out of those statements, out of those arguments. Those arguments aren't valid. That they don't offer anything. They don't provide anything There's no foundation, there's no evidence, there's no sound logic as to why this person isn't able to say what they said. It's just an emotional response. It's like, I can't believe you said that. You're such a homophobe. I can't believe you said that. You're such a transphobe. I can't believe you said that. You're such an Islamophobe. Okay, what did I say that was incorrect? What did I say that didn't make sense? What did I say that is not founded upon sound logic? They have nothing. They have no argument. It is just an argument from emotion of, I can't believe you said that. I'm outraged. I'm offended. And this is something I've heard repeatedly. I'm not sure who said it originally, but I heard it from Penn Jillette, and I think this is a very valid articulation of this. Just because you're offended does not mean that you are right. And that's what's going on, is I'm offended. So what? If you're offended, tell me why I'm wrong. Disprove my argument. Disprove my case. Don't just say, oh, but you're being emotional. Oh, but you're being angry. Oh, but you're being Islamophobic. That's not an argument. That doesn't refute anything that was said. That's the big difference between arguments made with emotion versus arguments made based on emotion. Arguments based on emotion have nothing solid to stand on. Because emotion is very subjective. Emotion is, oh, well, I have feelings for that particular race or that particular group or that particular, LGBT community or that minority. I care for them, therefore you can't say anything bad about them. And it's like, well, I said something that was factually true. It happened to be about that particular group that you're trying to defend. Tell me why it's incorrect to say that about them. And they have nothing. They have no argument. They have no case. They have nothing that they can say. They just say, oh, how dare you, or you can't pick on them because I feel so bad when you do that. That's the essence of their argument boiled down. That's the problem with arguments based on emotion. They don't convince anybody unless that same person has their same emotional mindset. Arguments from emotion, these people are poor and we need to protect them, only works if the other side says, oh yeah, those people are poor and we need to protect them. And then they are the same foundation as you, and then they follow the same logical course as you. If somebody says, why should we defend them? Your arguments from emotion don't do anything to change that person's mind. Whereas the person on the other side can make a sound, logical argument that should sway your mind towards their thinking. But you're too emotional to understand the actual logic, you're not applying your reasoning and thinking, and you just ignore any argument that is set before you that would invalidate your emotional position. So that's what I'm seeing constantly from both sides, left and right, is these people making these arguments from emotion that they can't support, they can't validate, and when anybody calls them out on it, they say, oh, well, that's just how I believe, that's just how I feel. Okay, then sure, that becomes your opinion and not a valid argument. Alright, and so that's the end of my rant for this video. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you guys next week.